You've built a successful business. Good for you. Hooray. Awesome. On this podcast, we've talked about entrepreneurs in lots of ways. We talked about buying a business and selling a business. But the one angle we haven't spent a lot of time on is the emotional or psychological elements to making a decision to sell your business. And when you put it that way, you can imagine that there's a lot that an entrepreneur or a business owner would have to process. We're going to put a fine point on that. Our guest is Jonathan Bennett. He is founder of ClearlyThen. He is someone who coaches senior executives and owners, but is also someone who has sold his own business. He joins us now from Peterborough, Ontario. Hello there, Jonathan.
Hi, Bruce. How are you?
You've got some experience on this topic. As I said, you're an advisor to business owners, but you're also an owner yourself. What was your experience like selling? Was it selling your baby?
It does feel a bit like selling your baby. I think my experience was fairly typical. I founded and bootstrapped a company, and over the course of 10 years, grew it and became really proud of all the things that we were able to achieve together. And in the back of my mind, I had the idea that I would one day like to sell it. And it came time, and I was able to orchestrate a management buyout, which is one way to exit a service-based business. And I thought that that was great, and it all came to pass. But what I wasn't ready for at the time was what it was going to do to me emotionally, to
And what
say
what
goodbye
did
and
you
let it go.
what did you notice about that for yourself?
That I really wrapped up my identity in the company that I had founded and grown. That I, of course, wanted to sell the business, and for all the reasons that people want to do that, and that it becomes a lot of folks' dream to one day exit. And I did that, and I thought that that would make me happy, and it did. But there was this other extra piece, and it was like surfing the Kubler-Ross curve of grief. All the stops on the journey, none of which I was really emotionally or mentally prepared for, but all of which I felt along the way.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. I looked it up. I was coming prepared to talk about Liz. What's interesting about that as a framework is when one's dealing with grief, it is, when we think about like the most common, it's the loss of someone that we love. In
Yeah.
this case, when you're selling a business, you had to sign on a contract. There is some agency that you had. So what are the similarities and differences? I mean, clearly grief's a part of it, but it's in some ways surprising given that you chose this.
Yeah, it's similar insofar as the emotions are big and they're unexpected and they show up at strange times. And you go through it, and people kind of look at you wondering what's wrong with you. Didn't you just get some kind of payout? Ought you not be happy? Wasn't this what you wanted? And all those things, yes, I mean, all those things are true. But there's a part of you that you're saying goodbye to. There's a whole bunch of people that you cared for, and this brand that you grew that you no longer have any control over, and somebody else is going to take it appropriately to other and new places, and you have no say in what that may or may not be. All of which is confronting. And in my work, I work with lots of founders that have been through this, and I think the common thread here is that there's folks out there, lawyers, accountants, other professional services people that can help you price and put your business on the market and go through the process of selling it, and that's great. What most people though don't prepare for is what it's going to take, and frankly, it's years of the
Wow.
unwinding, of the thinking through, who am I now? What do I want to do next? And I mean, maybe they're nice problems to have, but they're real, and they
Mm.
are quite big in your life.
There are humans who do the work to identify and process the emotions associated with this change, and those who don't do that work for lots of different reasons. What are the, I'm going to use a big word, what are the consequences to having, of underappreciating the emotional dynamics of selling? Where does that trip people up in their future career, in their relationships, in their relationship with self? What's the downside to not doing that work?
Well, for a lot of founders, they may have a trailer or something that keeps them tethered to the previous business in some way, shape, or form. And if you meddle in the thing that you mostly sold, you can harm it in all kinds of ways. And so that makes for not a good set of circumstances for the new owner. I hear a lot about that. The others is just the things in your life. What do you want to do next? How do you take control of your own story? How do you, design the next thing that you're going to do? If you've been entrepreneurial, chances are you'll remain it. And so thinking about how you're going to shape out and figure out who you want to be next and what the next stage in the journey can look like. If you don't do that in an active, thoughtful, caring way, then there can be consequences, mental health consequences, financial consequences. The folks around you might get kind of sick of you, just sort of, pining for the good old days. All of it's in play.
There are many perspectives from which people can engage on these questions. There are clinical psychologists, there are psychiatrists, there are social workers, and there are people like you who are coaches, executive coaches. What is your particular lens? How do you engage in this conversation in a way that's might be distinct from someone who is like therapeutic, they're following the Gestalt method or whatever it is? A
Yeah.
coach is not the same.
Yeah, and for those of us that are sort of coaches and advisors, we typically come at this work quite differently. Maybe there's some elements that are a little similar to some clinical folks. Maybe we ask people to show up and imagine who they are and try and figure what's sitting underneath those things. But we also can read a balance sheet and a P&L, and we're going to ask financially based and management based and leadership based questions. And I'm trying to help the person imagine what's next and why and how they're gonna reignite the love of building or the connection. Maybe they want to go and get a new job. Maybe they are ready for semi-retirement. I mean, all the possibilities are on the table. I just like to meet people where they're at and re-engage their like love of building and their creativity to try to allow them kind of move through these difficult moments.
To oversimplify the sale of a business, there is a before it occurs, there is a during it occurs, and then there is an after. The business is sold, it's done. What are the different pieces that happen depending on where you are in those three stages? And I'll ask it this way. First, with the before, how do you get ahead of this? How do you prepare for what, as you describe, will be kind of an inevitable thing? It'll look different according to the person, but it's inevitable that there's going to be some feels.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about. It's a bit like talking to a parent that's never had a kid, like that's going to become a parent, and
Right.
and it's sort of hard to describe how it's going to change your life. And so I do try, and I say, oh, there's going to be this emotional journey that you're going to go on. You've spent all this time building all the things I said earlier, and they kind of nod, but mostly they're thinking about how do I juice the EBITDA and how do I make this company look really great and try and get the best price. And so all of their energy is typically focused operationally in trying to buff and make the thing look great. And so one can try to a degree, and some of it can be like, let's start, in the same way that a financial planner might say, what are you going to start? It's, retiring is more than just,
Right.
leaving work. How are you going to fill your days and how are you going to stay engaged? All that kind of same thinking, I think, transposes across here. But folks are so busy and so fixated on getting the sale, it is actually quite hard to engage them beforehand. The during part is just tumultuous, emotionally tumultuous. Will it or won't it go through? Will I get the price that I want? How up and down will the sales process be? And it's really not until the after, as you frame it, Bruce, that I think that you can start to engage people. Some of it is the letting go. It's really done. You go through waves of feeling proud of the thing that you built and happy that you finally got paid the money you thought you were due. But also then there's the big open-ended question of, okay, so now what? Who am I? Because I'm not the thing that I built. Somebody else owns that now.
You've now got a lot of data, personal data, client data for people who have walked this path. What are some things that you have observed worked for those who have sold their business? They're in the after stage in terms of processing the emotion and finding that next thing.
I think giving yourself permission for a finite amount of time to just take stock.
Okay.
And people are so used to running hard. And the biggest mistake I see is when somebody just jumps on the first next thing. And it's probably not the right thing. And it's a bit like the rebound relationship,
Right.
to sort of mix metaphors here. I just counsel people, if you can afford to, if life gives you enough space to be able to do that, and, that's a privilege, but if it is, then to be able to take some amount of time, 6 months, 9 months, a year, to be able to just bake in what's just occurred and go through some sort of structured process to imagine what might be next for you and design that in a really intentional way. Because until you've kind of done the work of thinking it all through and felt all the feels all the way through, you won't know that you're ready to take the next risk, to maybe reinvest capital, to reinvest time, and also to make sure that it's really what you want to do next and for the next period of your life and career.
What are some indicators to you when you're working with a client that they haven't actually processed this in a way that is sufficient for them to move on? What are the things that you're listening for that have you say, okay, pause for a second. We need to go back and talk about the sale, because there's some things that are now impeding you from moving forward.
Yeah, I listen for little words. If it's still like we and us and our, uh, then we haven't moved on yet. I listen for old stories that are stuck. That they're still telling the stories of when they were in there and what they were doing, and of course the classic is spying on your former company. Overly reading the newsletters, digging deep into the socials, not being able to let go, and of course being actively critical of any new thing that the new management team or the new owners are doing. Why would they do such a thing? Why are they taking it? Like, some of it's human nature and some of it's a little normal. And so, there's a range here, but I do see some of my clients that just like sold it but can't let it go in their hearts because it was such a deep part of their identity. And that's where I take my work, is I take it there and we unpack that and we start to say, okay, so that was then, and how might we replace it, and what were the aspects of that you missed the most, and if you were going to redesign things in a new and better way, what could those look like?
As you say all that, it reminds me of stories in the headlines where you have founders who have sold and clearly have not moved on. Jonathan,
Yeah,
thank you so much for your insight on this topic. We really appreciate it.
my pleasure.
Jonathan Bennett, founder of ClearlyThen. He joined us to talk about some of the emotional aspects to selling a business. Hooray, you had the liquidity event, good for you. But what next?